Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, April the 23rd, year 2014, show 1005. My name is Shawn King. Thank you guys very much for joining me here on tonight's show. We're not going to have our good friend Jim Downpool tonight because Jim is in Ireland. He's off in Cork, Ireland. He's speaking at a conference there. So right now...
Welcome back, folks. This is
No, shut up, you. Right now, it's 5:32 our time, so 8, 9, 10. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning in Ireland. He's drunk. There'd be no point in even trying to communicate with Jim at this point. It'd just be a waste of our time and his and all that kind of stuff. So in Jim's place, we're going to have Ben Bajarin. Ben is the principal analyst at creativestrategies.com. He is also a columnist over at techpinions.com, and he was kind enough, after Apple's conference call today with the analyst, kind enough to come on and talk to me. A pre-recorded interview we did immediately after Tim Cook hung up on all the analysts, talking about what Apple announced, whether it was a good quarter last quarter, a bad quarter, what's going to happen in the future, and what this whole stock split thing is. Basically, the stock split, if you own stock the day that Apple splits, I think is June, I want to say June 2nd, I'm guessing sometime around early June, you're going to be a very happy person. The other thing is, if you want to buy stock after June 2nd, you could be a very happy person. Because right now, Apple's stock price is at somewhere around north of $500. Most of us can't afford that. But the stock price is going to drop down to somewhere around $75, maybe a little higher because of the people will be buying the stock up until that point. So what that means is you'll be able to afford it. But that may not be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. And Ben explains why in the interview I did with him. So thanks very much for Ben for joining me. We're also going to be talking about Snapseed in the Starting Point Photography segment. Snapseed, we talked about it briefly. I did a video of it on YouTube, and I mentioned it on the Your Mac Life, on the My Best Pick Of page. But I got a bunch of questions from folks. And... I'll do a live demonstration of Snapseed. It's Google Snapseed. It's available on the iTunes store. You do a search in the app section for Snapseed. There's I think it's a universal version or 2 separate versions. I'm not sure. It's free. Go get it now. Just do search Snapseed, one word. It's available for the iPad, available for the iPhone. Go get it. It's good. It's a good app. The thing is, I always tell folks about Snapseed is that every photo I post to Twitter or to Flickr or to Facebook, any picture I take on my iPhone gets passed through Snapseed at least once. I will sometimes take photos off of my desktop, put them on my iPad, edit them in Snapseed, and then post them from there. That's how much I love Snapseed. Even though Google has a version of it available on Google+, I don't like it. It does the same stuff. The interface is typical Google crap. It's awful. So I'll show you guys a live demo of Snapseed a little later on. On next week's show, the nice folks at Seagate have sent me I mentioned one of them a few weeks ago. This is their Backup Plus drive. It's a 2 terabyte drive. Well, yesterday in the mail, I got their, what's it called? Backup Plus Fast drive. This is a 4 terabyte drive. 4. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4 terabytes jammed into this little piece of plastic. For us old timers, being able to hold 6 terabytes in your hand for, I want to say, total under $300, this is remarkable. There is no excuse anymore for anyone not to have a full and complete, at least one backup of all your data. Most of us have got some version of Time Machine, or you can buy Carbon Copy Cloner or Super Duper or any of that kind of stuff. That's why I no longer have sympathy. I've said this many times in the show. No longer have sympathy for anybody who loses data in a hard drive crash, because there's no excuse for it anymore. There's none. With all of the free storage that's available, with the ability to upload things automatically. I mean, one of the reasons why I use Flickr is because they give me a terabyte of data for my photos. And my photos get automatically uploaded to Flickr when I take a picture on the iPhone. So if my iPhone crashes or I lose them, I've still got them in the cloud. For local storage, these kind of drives are great. They're not hugely fast, but if you're just doing them for backups, for local storage, these things can satisfy your backup for your entire household for the most part. So yeah, if you lose data nowadays, it's like, it's your own fault. And they're cheap too. You know, the under $100, you can easily get a terabyte for under $100. You can, if you wait a while, you can shop around and get 2 terabytes for under $100. No excuse not to have lots and lots of data backup, especially considering how big our hard drives are getting nowadays. You know, I've got in this MacBook Pro a 256 SSD drive, but then I've got a, I think, 750 megabyte or 1 terabyte hard drive in there too. So I've got the SSD drive for speed and the terabyte drive, hard drive for data and applications and that kind of stuff. And then I've got these other drives. There's 2 more drives over here. I've actually probably got too many drives. I've got an old Thunderbolt drive here, an old USB 2 drive here. Thunderbolt drive is SSD, 2 terabytes, and a 500 gigabyte FireWire drive for all kinds of backups. So I rotate my backups too. So that's the stuff we'll talk about on tonight's show. As always, love getting emails from you guys on air at yourmaclifeshow.com. Please send us emails if you want to talk about anything. Do you plan on buying Apple stock? Do you have Apple stock? You don't got to tell me how much. I probably don't want to know because it'll piss me off because I don't have any. Do you have Apple stock? Will you buy Apple stock leading up to the stock split in June? Will you buy Apple stock after the stock split? One of the things I've always wanted to do, because so many of us can't afford to buy shares, I've always wanted to start our own Macintosh. I thought of this like 10 years ago. Our own Macintosh, I guess it's called hedge fund or mutual fund, where you'd pool your money together, just like you would in your job, if your job has a mutual fund or hedge fund, to buy Apple stock. I thought that was kind of cool. And I found out it wasn't legal. Turns out you legally can't get a bunch of your friends together and pool money to buy stock. You have to go through a broker. So that idea died on the vine. Lauren says, it's called a commune, hippie. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, if you have Apple stock, send me an email on air, yourmaclifeshow.com. I'd be curious to know how many of our listeners actually do have Apple stock. And if you want to, tell me when you bought it, at what price point. You're going to tell me how much you own. But when did you buy it? Because the thing is with the stock split, Apple's done stock splits in the past, and they've been two for one stock splits. In other words, if you had 1 share, it would turn into 2. This is a 7-to-1. This is a year from now. This is going to be huge. Now, this is not stock advice. I'm not a stockbroker. I don't know anything about the stock market. I do know that Apple historically, over time, the stock has risen in price. There's been some significant dips, but over a 2 to 5 year period of time, Apple stock has always gone up. So I'd say a year from now, at least 2 years from now, you'll have doubled. If, let's say the share price, the split, ends up with the stock at $75. In 2 years from now, Apple will have easily doubled that $75. I predict. So if you've got shares or you're going to get shares, you could be in a real nice, happy place in 2 to 3 years. Always makes me wish I had the money to buy stock, because if I did, I would buy it. Ben also makes an interesting point about how Apple being on the NASDAQ as opposed to the Dow, which I hadn't thought of before. And he'll explain that a little later on in the show. So email on air at yourmaclifeshow.com. What kind of stock do you have? Do you buy stock? Will you buy Apple stock? Join us in the IRC chat room. As always, if you are an IRCer, we are in the irc.chat-solutions.org server in the pound Your Mac Life channel. If you're not an IRCer and you're watching the video, if you're watching the video from the website, yourmaclifeshow.com, right there at the bottom, at the top of this page, underneath the video, IRC is already set up for you, thanks to Monty. Monty's got it all set up for you to join the IRC, and it's half the fun of the show, as we always say. And you folks, I see you folks in the Google Hangouts are also doing chat there too. My apologies, I can't do the chat in Google Hangouts and the IRC chat and all the other kind of chat stuff that I got to do. MacMan says, can you use Share Builder in Canada? I have no idea what Share Builder is, so no clue what that is. MacMan says the price is under $100. I'll have to split. I'll buy a couple. I didn't know you could buy just a couple of shares. I always thought you had to buy them in bundles of 100 or 1,000 or something. I didn't know you could just buy one share. I know there was a company we had many years ago offered a prize of oneshare.com as their website, and you could buy one physical framed share of Apple stock, which is kind of cool. You know, it's an actual, because if you buy Apple stock, they're not going to send you those shares. And if you buy 1,000, you're not going to get 1,000 pieces of paper that say the shares. It's all virtual. But oneshare.com is a company that would actually send you a physical share. Now, it was more expensive than a share because it was framed, it looked nice, blah, blah, blah. But it was kind of neat. I have been digressing here. Have you guys been watching a TV show called Orphan Black? Their new season started on the weekend, and they ran a marathon of all of season 1. And so I binged watched season 1 over the weekend. Really interesting show. Really interesting concept for a show. The most amazing part about the show is the lead actress plays 9 different characters now. There's 9 different distinct, she's not schizophrenic, I won't ruin it for you, but she plays 9 different people on the show, and she plays them differently. It's bizarre to watch the show and have to keep reminding myself it's the same person. The other thing is the special effects of it are really good. When she's talking to herself, when she's talking to one of the other characters and she's playing the character, it looks real. It looks like there's 2 people there. It's really cool. The problem is the show kind of ran off the rails in episode 6. Literally, I'm sitting there going, yeah, this is bull. This is just a farce. And then episode 8, something happens, and I went, no, you're not gonna, no. And then episode 10, the last one of the first season, I was like, oh, come on. Are you kidding me? This is like, are you practicing to jump the shark? Still, it's a good show if you want to. And it got me thinking, if I could give you a magic TV that had all the future episodes of your favorite TV show that you could binge watch over a weekend from the beginning to the end, whatever the end's going to be, whether it's 4 years from now or 10 years from now, whatever it is, what would be that TV show? Pick one. What would be the one TV show that you'd want to see right now, this coming weekend, end to end? You can't wait for the next show. You can't wait to see what's going to happen next. You can't wait to see how they're going to wrap all this stuff up. For me, I think the obvious answer is Game of Thrones. I know I can read the books, and I've been talking about spoilers of Game of Thrones. I actually unfollowed 3 people this past week because of 3 listeners to Your Mac Life because they put out spoilers for Game of Thrones. It's like, no, delete, go, unfollow. I know I can read the books, and people say, oh, why are you whining about spoilers on a show for a TV show? The books have been out for 8 years. I didn't read the books! Why does everybody assume that if you watch the TV show, you've read the books? I never heard of the books until the TV show. I didn't care about the books until the TV show. And I'm not going to read the books until after the TV show is over. So I'm dying to know what happens at the end of Game of Thrones. If you gave me, I think it's for at least 2 more seasons, maybe 3 more seasons, including this one. If you gave me the future episodes of Game of Thrones, I would sit there in front of my TV set for the next 27 hours and just watch straight through. I'd get myself a big old bag of popcorn and just veg out, man. Just turn into a zombie and watch Game of Thrones. On air at yourmaclifeshow.com. Let me know what would be the TV show that you would watch. One show. I'm going to give you one show that you'd watch straight through. It's not over yet, but you would watch it from now until whenever it's over. Let me know. When we come back, we're going to talk to Ben Bajarin from techpinions.com. He's also the principal analyst over there at creativestrategies.com. He's going to talk about Apple's earning results. This is Your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. This is Shawn King and your Mac Life. On the phone now with Ben Bajarin of Creative Strategies and TechPinions.com. Ben, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
Good. Just got off the conference call with, not with, but listening to the conference call with Apple. Overall, Q2, how would you give it a letter grade, A through F?
Well, it's a little bit easier to do it per product category, but
No, I asked for it
I know,
overall.
I know you did. Fine. Overall, I'd guess we're going to give them, a B plus, A minus ish. Let's call it B plus. I mean, the bottom line was they actually had a really good quarter for iPhones. My thinking on that is that it had a lot to do with the emerging markets. I think the growth in places from like China, they even stated really significant double-digit numbers for India, Vietnam, growth in Indonesia, Brazil. These are all markets that people thought they just really had no shot in, and seeing double digit growth is extremely encouraging for the iPhone.
One of the things
So I think that's.
One of the things I
Go
always
ahead.
have concern about when it comes to these double-digit growth numbers is if you sold one and the next quarter you sell two, that's 50% growth. So are the numbers
Yeah. Well,
actually large enough, or is this just playing with
no.
math?
Yes, they're starting from small numbers. I mean, think about it, right? In Indonesia, they maybe had, you know, 100,000, maybe less, right?
Yeah.
Devices. So they go to, 150,000, and that's, hey, look, we grew, double digits because we grew. So absolutely, they're starting from small numbers. But again, these in Indonesia, India. I mean, India, for example, they quoted double digit growth, and so I look at numbers there, and so there's probably, I don't know, less than 10 million iPhones
Mhm.
in India. But India only has a smartphone install base of just over 100 million, or sorry, 55 million, So that's not a terrible, number in terms of their overall size. But, you jump a little bit in terms of overall growth, and yes, it equals, large percentages. But like I said, in these markets, Apple's just for the most part counted out. They just think, oh, you can't grow there. So
Yeah.
even though they're starting from such a small base, I think the fact that they're seeing these markets emerge and that they're at least seeing growth there. I mean, again, and enough growth to help them beat the estimates, I think, is the way you've got to look at that, because I'm telling you, it didn't come from your developed countries. I mean, these are flat environments. So they beat it by what, 5 million, something like that. The fact that came from these other markets enough to help them beat and offset some of these mediocre markets, that's a big deal.
Company said it had earnings of 10.2 billion, 11.62 per share, revenue of 45.6. Are those good numbers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it's a record quarter for them. With their best, March quarter ever. I mean, we hear them say this it's like every call. It's our
That's
best
right.
quarter ever. It's our best quarter ever. And
It's like
so
Juan Antonio Samaranch at the end of every Olympics always says, "This is the best Olympics ever." After a while, it gets sort of tired, doesn't it?
exactly. But regardless, it's their best March quarter ever. So, I mean, again, it's good numbers that they've put out. I think, everybody's going to look at it and say, you still have a huge top end revenue growth problem, right? I mean, there's no longer an S curve for Apple in terms of growth.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think we can just expect it to just continue to be monumental. But again, these are good numbers for what's again normally a down quarter. We're going or lull. This isn't an enterprise buying cycle. This isn't a consumer buying cycle. It's not really education buying cycle. So, they did okay for what's typically not a great quarter. I think in some cases you can think they'd actually did better than usual for a quarter that's like this one that we're in.
But that being said, they have guided lower for the June quarter. Apple said it expects a drop in revenue
Yeah.
between 36 and 38. Isn't that going to be a big concern?
Yeah, well, I mean, and again, I think the perspective around that is because when you move into the fall quarters, there's a heavy expectation of new products,
Yeah.
and so with the imminent announcement of new products, people are waiting to see what happens. So again, so here's the products that aren't affected by that are your 5S type of a product, which is doing well, but you're not gonna, you can't expect sales of the 4S to carry the offset of people not buying 5Ss, to some degree 5Cs, or even new iPads to carry through, that group that's going to wait it out and see what they announce and then make their decision to buy in the fall or the holiday.
headline from quartz.com. Why Apple has stopped growing, has it?
Well, I mean, again, that's the issue that has to be addressed. I think growth has to be put back into perspective. Like I said, they followed an S curve of growth over the past decade, and like all companies, you reach some sort of a peak in terms of just how fast you can continue to grow, and people can't expect that they're still on this growth curve when again their strategy from a product standpoint is to tackle more the higher tiers of the market. I mean, inevitably at some point in time, you just simply, run out of customers
Yep.
in the area that you're targeting. So it's gonna, and I think it's hard to say that look, any new category, whether it be a TV or a wearable or a watch, is going to help accelerate or bring growth back to that S curve. They're just in a cycle where they're trying to build their ecosystem. What was incredible, they said they've got 800 million now, about 800 million accounts, which is roughly, I would say, about their active user base. It's not their install base of any, but that's their active user base, which is quite significant. And they've got this ecosystem. They'll inevitably get themselves to 1 billion, iTunes accounts, and that will be their active user base. So while growing, it's just not growing at the same rate. And that, I think, is the issue that a lot of Wall Street analysts like to look at because, for the most part, you want to see continued growth, which brings people back into the stock for long-term investments. So that I think is how they grow and the rate that they grow, is going to be the big kicker. But yeah, I mean, growth has slowed. It's remotely flat, and there's just not a lot they're going to do that helps it go back to that S curve. They'll grow some. I don't think they're done growing. They'll grow some. They're just not going to grow at the same rate that they had.
You said bringing investors back into the stock. Is that the reason behind the 7-for-1 stock split?
Well, it's both that, it's a return, it's a confidence, and then yes, what that gives you is it's going to bring the stock price down to something around $75, depending on the number they hit. But I think it's around $75. That opens up a lot of possibilities. Actually, I mean, one, it lets a lot of investors who would never jump in at the above 500 mark get in. They're actually going to return to existing shareholders, which is kind of a good, hey, look, we're even though we're not growing at the rate and return amount of monetary value to you as we we're helping you out this way by giving you more shares, and so you'll participate even more on the upside than you would, and it's not going to cost you anything more. So there's benefits to that. There's and even another interesting theory that I've heard kicked around by Wall Street analysts for some time. Something that I want to write about in a bit more detail when I get some more time, but that by lowering their stock price, it actually opens them up to possibly get onto the Dow. And if they can get onto the Dow, they have a much more conservative base of investor pool now to deal with, people who really appreciate not necessarily fast-growing companies like the NASDAQ does, but just consistently growing companies.
So
Types of.
Sorry, go ahead.
I just think those are the types of investors like the Dow has. Broader hedge funds, more on the conservative side, more slow to moderate growth types of things. Those are the kind of investors that actually make a lot of sense to pay attention to Apple and potentially invest in Apple, given where they're at right now, that they're not a steep growth company anymore, but they'll continue to grow and return value.
So are you saying that being on the NASDAQ, the overheated sometimes NASDAQ, may be hurting Apple because of these expectations,
Yes.
and the Dow being a little more, let's say, stodgy and more conservative, might be the proper place for Apple?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
I hadn't thought of it that way.
The NASDAQ, is good for your hot IPO companies, your companies who are going to see an accelerated growth period. These are the type of investors that play in these. It's not normally, your real long type of bull type of investors.
Mm-hmm.
The Dow has some mixes of those, but the Dow is a much more, it's like the S&P 500. It's just a generally more conservative area. You can put your money in these, and for the most part, guarantee you're going to get, anywhere from 7, 8, 10% return on that every year. So it's conservative, but it consistently grows.
I'm talking to Ben Bajarin, the principal analyst at Creative Strategies, also a columnist at techpinions.com. So explain to me, Ben, what a stock split actually is, and how it's an advantage to either Apple and or folks who have stock or want to buy stock.
Well, I mean, so let's just use it in another number. So a stock price, you own one share of a stock, and it's at $100.
Okay.
They decide to split that stock to 50. You now have two shares at
But
$50.
they're still worth
So
in grand total. They're still worth
the
a hundred
same amount.
bucks. Okay. Okay.
Correct, correct. But the assumption then is that you bring it down to $50, and if five more people invest in it, it makes it easier for it to grow at perhaps a faster rate.
Hmm.
So you attract a bunch of more potential investors at that price point. So while you now have doubled your shares and each one goes up relatively the same, the bottom line is the hope is that it will grow up. It will go up faster than it being at 50 than it would have at 100. So it's for you. Microsoft, I mean, almost, in the .com era, this was standard, right? And so Microsoft split annually for like 4 years. I remember because I had Microsoft stock and it
Yeah.
made me a lot of money. And every year they went to 160 and they split. Then they went back to 160, then they split. And they went back to that same and they split. And you just kept getting more stock, and then it would just keep raising, and you get another one. It just keep going, and you just kept on making money. And so that's the hope of this, is that employee retention, this is good for you. Now if you're an employee, you've all of a sudden got double your stock. I mean, you've opened it up to investors. I mean, look, how many people, I mean, look, Apple's going to go to $75 a share.
Yeah.
It's been at 525. Google's never, they're going to split, but they're splitting in half. So this becomes interesting. This would be an interesting story to watch, because it goes back to my original point about the Dow, which is just open it up to other investors. Now the tricky thing, danger in doing this, is let's say you get a lot of new investors, but these are conservative investors. Well, at the first sign of danger, they may just dump all their stock, and then all of a sudden your stock's declining. So any gain got, just sort of get in and are now wiped away, because you don't have people who are in it for the long haul when something bad happens, or they get frazzled by the media.
But isn't that the case of what happens now? It just sounds like if Apple goes the Dow, it won't be any worse off. They're already getting hammered by a Nasdaq, by analysts who don't really seem to understand Apple and the way their market goes. So it doesn't seem like under your scenario it would hurt them all that much.
Well, I mean, and again, and in this point, I'm not necessarily saying the Dow. Let's table that
Okay.
possibility. And I'm just talking about keeping themselves on the Nasdaq at $75.
Yeah.
So you get, you and I, not me, or even you may, if unless you think it's a conflict, but I can't. But other people, like my grandparents, I mean, they could get in and say, all right, it's at 75 bucks. But these are investors, again, who might freak out, right? So your general public, who could potentially afford and tell their stockbroker, hey, I'm going to put in $500, buy me some Apple shares.
Yeah.
They may be the ones to first dump it when something happens, right? So it's not you're not even talking about analysts at this point. You're opening it up to more small time and individual investors, and that's where those fluctuations could really even come into play, even more so than if it was just the institutions investing, which is pretty much what it is today.
To be clear, my only conflict with owning Apple stock is with my bank account.
Well, hey, you stand on the street with a sign and say, hey, we'll work for money to put a share in Apple. Get yourself $75, Shawn, and then get yourself one share.
Can just completely off topic, can people actually buy one share of something? I know there's a company that would do this for you, but can you go to etrade.com and just buy one share?
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't know that. I thought you had to buy them in bunches of hundreds or thousands or things like that.
Nope. Just buy one. Buy five. Buy two.
I didn't realize you could do it that small. The only real concern not real concern, but the biggest concern before this call today was the idea that iPads weren't selling as well as people assumed or thought. And it's sort of kind of almost true with what Tim Cook said today. Any concerns with the lower number of iPad sales?
Yeah, I mean, I guess they looked to justify it in terms of channel sales, and I mean, in terms of quarters, they missed it by 500,000, right? It was 17.5. They sold 18 the same quarter, so not a monumental miss. I mean, again, it's not the 26 that they had, but it's also not the 14 they had the 2 quarters before the holiday.
Mm-hmm.
So the bottom line is it's not bad. I just think that people have been expecting this to just be an iPhone like meteoric rise, that it would just sort of continue to grow quarter after quarter after quarter. And the bottom line is the dynamics of the tablet form factor, the role that it's playing, which is more PC like than smartphone like, is just the bottom line is it's different. It's subject to much more seasonality. And so you've got other things. You've got the channels different. These aren't subsidized purchases. You buy these at retail.
Yeah.
The life cycle's different. We don't even know what the life cycle of a tablet is, but I would honestly imagine, Apple sold 210 million iPads, that a fair amount of those are still in use today, including the iPad 1.
Yep.
So, look, this is 3 years going on 4 now of availability. So we don't know what refresh cycles for these are. So it's really hard to make an expectation or an assumption about the growth rate of the iPad and kind of why it's off versus why it's not. We've had some recent data come in that makes it very interesting, because it showed that basically over 50% of tablet owners share their tablet with someone else. So if you just use that observation and say, okay, if we all live together and you've got an iPad and maybe there's two in a house of 4 people, that's actually enough, right? Not everybody needs to have one. You've got everybody kind of able to use it because it's shared. So you could see how that could impact sales, because it's not necessarily one per person. It might be 1 or 2 per home. So those are the kind of dynamics we're still figuring out about the tablet. But even Tim Cook said that they still think that this market's bigger than the PC market. I mean, I agree. I think globally we see way more evidence that tablet sales are poised to take off and do many, many more interesting things in the PC market. So there's a lot of runway ahead. But I think we're in this interesting period where it's, what is it? How long does it stay in market? What are refresh rates, et cetera? Those are things we don't know. So I'm not worried about the iPad business at all.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like Tim Cook is either. He did note in the call that 2/3 of Apple's iPad customers had never owned an iPad before. The iPad is the fastest growing product in Apple history. And he said, and this is something I wish people would pay more attention to, he said iPad sales came in at the high end of our estimates, not what the analysts predicted, but what Apple estimated. I think those are numbers that are more important than any guesses that analysts may take at these sort of things.
Yeah, and I think they're also internally sort of trying to figure out what are the cycles of these, what are the seasonalities, because again, they have to ramp manufacturing, so their own expectations of what they see in channel evidence they see in the market is. And this product has, continually the highest customer satisfaction of any tablet, the highest engagement.
Yep.
I mean, there's a lot of positive signs around it. But like I said, that extension of a life cycle, how long do they stay in market, the fact that it is more poised to be shared than something else, all of those things are going to factor into when other people start buying or upgrading or getting one of their own. And so those are all dynamics that we're learning from right now. I mean, we're in uncharted territory with the tablet.
You've said several times on Twitter and techpinions.com that there's huge competition for smartphones in Asia, in the Middle East, in that region of the world. Is there nearly as much competition for the iPad? It seems like the iPad is so head and shoulders above any other device, even if folks in those regions, underdeveloped regions, can't afford them right now. When they can afford them, they'll probably buy an iPad. That's not necessarily the case for the iPhone. So do you think there's still a lot more growth room for Apple in the underdeveloped world?
Well,
when it comes to the iPad?
I certainly do. I mean, I think you've got a couple of dynamics in play there. I mean, one, in a lot of those countries, they're pretty much just smartphone only at this point. You've got, much lower disposable income. And in places like China, the norm there is, 5-inch, 5.5-inch, 6-inch phones. So, what need do you have for really a tablet at this point is still sort of minimal. But you're right. I mean, in terms of how we're seeing iPad used versus other tablets in those markets, there's really no comparison. I mean, you could argue that the iPad is the only tablet that's actually used as a tablet in those markets. The rest of the times they're just DVD players or game players. They're not being used for anything meaningful from a tablet standpoint. Interestingly, even though we hear about tablets galore going on in China, the iPad actually still has the highest internet usage in China as a tablet than any other platform, Android included, even though we know there's more Android tablets in China than iPads. So those are dynamics that I think we're waiting to see what they do. I mean, could they bring price points down? Is a very reasonable, thing. I mean, I've always speculated, why don't they just get more aggressive with the iPad Mini?
Yeah.
And even if they want, just put the phone or the data modem in those and have it, let it be a phablet in emerging regions, right? So there's certainly a lot of things that they can do. But yes, I think there's a lot less. There's not tablets aren't viewed the same way as the iPad in these emerging markets. They're either viewed as disposable game type purchases, whereas the iPad's actually viewed as a usable kind of mini computer in those markets. And there's no other tablet that's viewed that way.
There was a graph that was sent out by folks at Mac Rumors, a pie chart. Remarkable numbers. Any concern over the fact that 57% of Apple's sales are from the iPhone? If they stumble in that category, that could cost them a huge amount, couldn't it?
Well, and I think that was, there was a question brought up on the call about their diversification of their businesses, is relying on one business, a danger. But I think, you sort of go back to economies of scale, right? There is no larger single business annually in terms of a device than the smartphones, right?
Yeah.
No single product will sell in the billions annually. So you're right. There's I suppose, a concern that if they stumble, they take a big hit, but I think they're playing a very different game than so many of the other smartphone manufacturers, that it would really be hard for them to take as big of a hit that would, be either destructive or truly disruptive to this business. I think rounding out the iPhone in what they're doing creates a lot of sustainable diversity across their revenue streams. But I just think there's just no way they've got anything that's going to consume the pie chart like you showed as a block like the iPhone anywhere in the pipeline. It's still about this personal, intimate computer that you put in your pocket.
Folks, I've been talking to Ben Bajarin. He is the principal analyst over at creativestrategies.com, also columnist at techpinions.com. You can read more about what he has to say at techpinions.com. Ben, thanks very much for taking this time to do this. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anytime.
Welcome back. So there's pretty much no doubt Apple made a metric buttload of money. Now, if you watched some of the Mac Web leading up to this, everyone thought this was going to be a boring report from Apple, including this numbnut over at iMore. This guy wrote a column, "How can Apple excite investors beyond Q2's financial year 14 boring quarterly report?" This guy's name is Chris Umletskowski. He posted this today at about noon. Why would you post something like this before the analyst call? It was going to happen 2 hours later. Just so you could maybe predict something, say, oh, this is boring. Because what happened is you just made yourself look like an asshat because it wasn't boring. It was the furthest possible thing from boring. Apple announced record revenues, record profits. Oh, and by the way, that they're going to give everyone free money. That's what a stock split's going to be, unless Apple somehow craters. On June 2nd, if Apple stock split 7-1 and it's $100, and you end up, so you've got $700 in Apple stock now, and it's split 7-1, and you've got 7 stock worth $100 each, the price is going to go up. If it craters somehow, yes, then this is a bad thing. But it's not going to crater. I can't imagine what kind of global financial meltdown we'd have to for Apple stock to crater in the next 6 months. That's what it would take. It would take a sinkhole opening up and swallowing Cupertino whole for the stock to crater. So this guy makes himself and iMore look like a bunch of morons by saying how can Apple excite investors? Well, guess what? Investors are pretty frickin' excited right now, you moron. So basically, Apple has done what they've always done. They've announced buttloads of money. They've announced that they're giving buttloads of money back to customers. They've announced that they're doing pretty damn good when it comes to all the things that most people care about. When I was talking to Ben Bajarin, I was looking at sharebuilder.com. I think we've been talking about it in IRC. I think I'm going to try to get the ShareBuilder guys on the show to talk about it. So you see with this chart, if you're watching the video, Apple's closing price today was $524. The chart below shows the progression of Apple's stock from, let's say, 1 month. In the last month, they're down 1.5%. Okay, that's fine. In the last 3 months, they are down 4.85%. Okay, not great, not looking good so far. In the last 6 months, Apple's down 0.04%. In the last year, they're up almost 30%. In the last 5 years, Apple is up 318%. And in the last 10 years, Apple's up 3,688%. So, again, if you're looking for a day trader type stock, if you're looking for a short-term hit, Apple is not your man. But if you're going to hold on to that stock for significant periods of time, and I'm talking a year, 2, 3, 5 years, you're almost guaranteed of making money on the Apple stock. And again, I'm not a stockbroker. Don't come to me in 5 years and I lost money. I don't care. I don't have money, so don't tell me you've lost it. So to say that Apple had a boring announcement before the announcement even happened makes you look like a complete tool. Stop doing that. Stop predicting things that you shouldn't be predicting. I got a bunch of news items here I got to run through for you guys. Did you see this? This is one of the problems I have with the Mac web in general, and probably most of the web in particular. People are afraid. They're either afraid or stupid. They're either afraid to call a spade or too stupid to know what a spade looks like. Perfect example is this Cult of Mac story. New iOS game Bonsai Slice turns your iPad into a sword. Now, I thought when I first saw this, was okay, so it's going to be like Fruit Ninja. You know, Fruit Ninja's fun. It's fun to play with kids, especially. Fruit pops up on your screen, and you use your fingers, and you hack and slice it away. It's cute. It's actually fun on the Xbox, too. So that's what I thought it was. So I started reading this story. And it turns out, when they say turns your iPad into a sword, they actually mean turn your iPad into a sword. What it means is you swing your iPad around. The game uses the iPad's gyroscope, letting you swing, slash, and stab a sword just by swinging your iPad around in a room. How could you not tell people this is a stupid idea? How could you possibly think that swinging your iPad around is good in any way, shape, or form? This is a minimum of a $500 electronic device. Why would you swing it around? Why would you write a story saying, this is a good idea, instead of saying, no, don't do this? Have the balls to tell your audience when things are bad. And this is bad. This is one of the dumbest ideas for a controller I've ever seen in my life. You should not be swinging around multi-$100 worth of electronics. I mean, there's a reason why the Wii and other controllers have a strap on the bottom of it so you can strap it to your arm. Because the things slip out of your hands. And the Wii has got a trigger and grips and that kind of, and the thing still slips out of people's hands. I don't know about you, but iPads can get kind of greasy and grimy. Don't do this. Don't swing your iPad around. And you know what? Even better, just don't read Cult of Mac. I think that's probably the best thing to do. Did you notice Apple has, and this is a concerted effort, this is not coincidental, Apple has Monday, Tuesday, and today had several articles going out about Earth Day and about their recycling efforts and their environmental efforts. This is a marketing program put into place by Apple. This is done intentionally. For example, there's a story on time.com today. Apple will now recycle any product, any Apple product, you give back and might even give you credit for it. So you've got a bunch of old junked devices, old Macs or old iPads or iPhones, whatever it is, you can take it into your local Apple store and they'll recycle it for you for free. And they might even give you store credit for it. Now, if it's an old iPad, probably not. Or an old Mac, probably not. If it's broken, certainly not. But at least now you don't got to worry about throwing it in a landfill. You don't got to worry about throwing it in your local garbage. Because a lot of those older Macs had some pretty toxic chemicals in them. And a lot of them, if you've got an old CRT Mac, there still might be significant amounts of electricity stored up in that device. Probably not, I don't know, but I was always told never mess with a CRT monitor because they had a lot of juice, even unplugged, they had a lot of juice. So at the very least, you can get rid of this stuff. I'm hoping my friend Marie Chevalier's wife, Shelley, doesn't find out about this because she might recycle all his old stuff just out of spite. But it's an another interesting environmental aspect that Apple is pushing. Along with the Apple's website, their people saw it as a dig at Samsung, and maybe it is. I don't care about that. But did you see the film called Better? Did you notice who was the narrator of that? Tim Cook narrated that video. Not Richard Dreyfuss, not Peter Coyote, not Jeff Goldblum, not any one of 1,000 million other people they could have gotten to narrate that video. Tim Cook narrated that video. I find this really, really interesting. Really, really interesting. This shows how important this is to Tim Cook personally. This is not from this point of view, this is not a gimmick that Tim Cook is doing this. He's doing this because this is something he feels very, very passionate about. I think it's something we should really pay attention to and really be interested in. The fact that Tim Cook himself is the guy who stood up and did this video. Now, I'm not going to completely pat Apple on the back for their environmental efforts, because one of the things they did you see the story, where was it? It was in Wired magazine. They gave access to Stephen Levy from Wired.com to basically follow around the Lisa Jackson, Apple's vice president for environmental initiatives. The story is called Apple Aims to Shrink Its Carbon Footprint with New Data Centers. And that's good. It's absolutely good. This is a great thing for Apple to be doing, and I applaud them for doing it. I'm glad they're doing it. I hope and wish other companies would do it. But while we all pat Apple on the back for this kind of stuff, if you read the article, you'll note that it says Apple is close to its goal of powering all its facilities 100% by renewable energy. And that's great. That's absolutely fantastic for Apple, and other companies should follow suit when it comes to these sorts of things. Its corporate campuses and data centers are now at 94% renewable and rising. For example, in 2010, it was 35%. The next step is to extend the effort to its retail stores. Again, all great news. But, and this is where Apple doesn't get enough pushback from the media. In this accounting, Apple does not include the manufacturing, transport, and use of its actual products. These account for 98% of Apple's carbon footprint. So while Apple says they're close to the goal of getting all the facilities 100% with renewable clean energy and 94% for its corporate campus and data centers, that's a very, very, very small amount when it comes to the overall carbon footprint of the entire company. And I get the fact that it's going to be hard. They're doing the relatively easy stuff first. I get that. I mean, it's going to be hard transportation-wise to get that stuff with renewable energy. You can't get things from China to Cupertino in an easily renewable energy kind of way. There are no ships that run on sunlight that can transport that stuff. There are no planes that you can drop ship things with. So I'll cut them some slack on that, but don't pat them too hard on the back. They still have a lot of ways to go. The other really interesting part of this story, and no one that I've seen has caught it. I don't know if they didn't read this part, but I thought this was really, really interesting. Lower down in the article, the third to last paragraph says, in reporting this story, I was allowed to describe everything I saw, with one exception, Stephen Levy says. The manufacturer of the servers in Apple's data centers. He says, I can say that they were not Mac Minis or anything else that you'd buy in an Apple store. Isn't that interesting? I think that's very, very interesting. That what is Apple powering these data centers with? Any guesses? You can't buy it in an Apple store. Well, if they were old Xserves, Apple would allow him to say that. So they're not old Xserves. Apple's running their data centers on some kind of PC-type server hardware. That's not a bad thing. It's admitting that their server products, or lack thereof, aren't robust enough. And it might be kind of embarrassing to have Apple data farms running on other machines. Brian Monroe says, but something that they're not selling to the public. Xserves. Well, that's a possibility. It might be a internal only Xserve, which would be very interesting. Regardless of who does it, it's interesting that they wouldn't allow him to say that. And again, I understand. Now, Hiker BC says, back up a bit, you can't include end users in a renewable energy calculation. Okay, I'll give you that. But you can include your transportation, your manufacturing, the things that you can control. You can include those things. So Apple still has a long way to go. They are completely going in the right direction. And I think I would posit that they are doing more faster than any other technology company out there. I'll definitely give them props for that. They are working harder. They are putting in procedures and implementations and hiring people and building things and buying things at a rate that no other company can match. And they will get to energy, to use lack of a better term, self-sufficiency faster than any other company, I believe. Any other company of their size. Certainly in the technology field. So from that point of view, I'll give Apple props for that. But we can't lose sight of the fact that they still have a very, very long way to go. Some of you may have heard the story that Apple is, and it's another example of the reporting on this being kind of weak. Apple is opening up their OS X beta program for 10.9.3 and 10.9.3 only. Okay, they haven't said that you'll be able to do this in the future, but so Apple is saying you can sign up for free and get beta and pre-release versions of OS X. Don't do this. Don't do it. Unless you are a professional. Unless you have a separate machine that is not mission critical. In other words, if you've got an old machine lying around that ain't doing nothing, that you don't care if it blows up, maybe you'd want to do this. Do not do this unless you're willing to offer beta feedback. There's no point in you doing it. So you'll get a new thing earlier. You're not allowed to talk about it. You will, but you're not allowed to. It's liable to break a lot of the software that you already have. And it's going to cause a lot of confusion for tech support people. Someone out there, this is going to happen. I guarantee it. Someone's going to sign up for this. They're going to download a pre-release beta version of OS X, install it. Software is going to break, and they're going to go bitch to the software manufacturer. They're going to go bitch to Smile Software, or bitch to 1Password, or bitch on Facebook or on Twitter. Oh, this broke. This software's a piece of crap. Because it's beta software. That's what happens. Beta software breaks. You will not get tech support from Apple if you're running the OS X beta. They've said it in the the agreement that you have to sign. We're not tech supporting your dumb ass. If you bring this into the Apple Store, we're turning your ass away and making you go home. So for the 95% of us, you don't need this. You don't need the headaches. You don't need the hassle. You don't need any part of this. Peter Cohen's got a good article over on iMore, the 5 reasons to stay away from Apple's OS X beta seeding program. It's pre-release software. Yes, that's exactly it. It's software that is not yet ready for prime time. There's no support. It says in the agreement, during your participation in the seeding program or in a particular seed, Apple is not obligated to provide you with any maintenance, technical, or other support for the pre-release software. They're not going to help you. You're not allowed to talk about it. Again, people will, but you will sign a non-disclosure agreement with Apple that says you can't talk about this stuff. If this is your only Mac, you're asking for trouble. You're asking for this thing to blow your machine up. And if you're concerned about privacy, I hadn't thought about this, but as Peter points out, you give Apple the right to collect diagnostic, technical, and You give Apple the right to collect diagnostic, technical, and usage data from you. You can't opt out, but it takes a bit of work. None of this data is personally identifiable, according to Apple. But if you don't want to take the chance, then just don't do it. You're not getting any huge benefit out of it. It's just not worth it. Brian Monroe says in the IRC chat room, beta software runs slower as it has brakes and logging turned on. This is a bad thing for your normal production systems. Again, do not run this on a production system. Do not run this on any machine that you need to have up and running on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour, minute-to-minute basis. If you do, you're an idiot. Monty says, I really dislike end users who install beta software. After agreeing to provide feedback and bug reports, they never give any. Exactly. I don't understand why Apple's doing this. I don't see the advantage to Apple for them to open this up to the general public. The vast majority of folks won't provide any sort of beta feedback. The vast majority of folks will have things break on them. And the vast majority of those folks will, once those things break, then bitch all over the internet about it. I see no upside for Apple in this. One of the most idiotic stories we saw on the web last week was from Slate. Rotten Apple. I won't buy another iPhone or Mac until the company pays its fair share of taxes. Care to join me? No! Because you're a moron. You win the Ass Hat of the Day award. Apple pays its quote-unquote fair share of taxes. I guarantee you they do. You know why? Because they have accountants, and they're a publicly traded company, and they're legally required to. They're not legally required to pay more than their fair share of taxes. How would you like it if I told you, this is Lisa Standers over at Slate, Lisa, you're not paying enough taxes. You should pay more. You would say no. You would say, no, Shawn, I'm not going to pay any more taxes than I absolutely have to. Apple's doing the same thing. Apple is paying the exact amount of taxes that the U.S. tax code requires it to. And that's what you're actually pissed off about, not Apple. Although, in your myopic thinking, you think this is all Apple's fault. But it's because of the way the U.S. tax code is structured that Apple can do this. And it's good that Apple does this, because they're supposed to. It's their fiduciary duty to make money for the shareholders. She says, now the other thing is that she doesn't seem to get the whole idea of this is legal, and thousands upon thousands of companies and people do this every day, every tax year. This is legal. If you want Apple to pay more taxes, and I understand, I have no problem with people wanting Apple to pay more taxes. But don't get on Apple for that. Get on your congressman, on your senator, on the people who write the laws and create the loopholes that allow companies like Apple to do these kinds of things. Apple's just taking advantage of the loopholes that were written in by your politicians. So if the politicians write the loopholes, make your politicians close the frickin' loopholes. And the other aspect of this I don't get from this woman is that she said she's not going to buy anymore. She's been an iPhone user and an iPad user and all that kind of Apple. We're done. It's not me. It's you. Okay, that's fine. You want to take a principled stand? Then stand by your principles and don't buy any products from any company that evades taxes in this kind of way. You're going to be walking on a paper sack pretty quick, because most companies, I'd venture to bet every company that's got a halfway decent tax lawyer and accountant uses some sort of loophole to get out of paying some level of taxes. You're going to be butt naked walking down the street in bare feet, Lisa, because you can't pull your head out of your own ass long enough to realize this is not Apple's problem and this is not Apple's fault. There's another example of a product that, while people may have asked for this product, you really shouldn't want this product. This is a narrative clip. It's a tiny automatic camera and app that gives you a searchable and shareable photographic memory. What it is it's this little thing, a little camera you clip onto yourself. And every 30 seconds, it takes a picture of whatever it sees. And it does this all day long. Why? I'm sorry, folks, but 99% of the people who would buy this thing are not that interesting. Okay? I'm sorry. I hate to break this to you, but your day-to-day life is not that interesting. If I gave you one of these and forced you to watch it, you'd want to open a vein after about a week, because you'd realize just how freaking mundane and boring your life is. There may be moments that are really interesting, but 99% of the time, you ain't doing nothing that's worth taking a picture every 30 seconds. Justine will be all over that shit. Yeah, she's the exact kind of person this is for. This kind of new media douchebag who somehow believes that their life is so interesting, not only to themselves, but to others. I guarantee you that either Narrative has sent her one, or I'm surprised Justine's still around for that matter, or Justine has already bought one and has happily got that thing clipped and taking 30 seconds, so that's how many pictures? That's 120 pictures an hour. And 10 hours a day, that's 1,200 pictures. I guarantee you 1,199 of those pictures are going to be blurry, out of focus, and just crap. It's a stupid product. Only going to be worn by stupid people. This is another version of Google Glass. We don't care enough. It's got a storage capacity of 4,000 pictures and batteries for 2 days. I think, I want to say this thing's like $250. Let's go to the shop site and see how much this stupid thing costs. Yeah, $279. If you have $279 to burn, please send it to me instead. Don't waste not only your time, but the time of the people you're going to torture with this idiotic device. Because I guarantee you, your friends don't want to see this. I promise you that nobody really wants to see this. Nobody really cares. Okay? Trust me, no one cares. Oh, dear. If the things aren't expensive, they'd make great wildlife time-lapse cameras. No, they probably wouldn't, Monty. If only because they're going to be low resolution. What's the resolution on these stupid things? Narratively. All right, it's much better. Where'd that page go? I lost the page. Oh, there's Shop Narrative. Website getnarrative.com if you're interested in it. They say the storage capacity of 4,000 photos. It doesn't say anything about the actual. It's a 5 megapixel camera. Takes 2 pictures every minute. Doesn't say resolution of those, but so it's not a huge. It's not going to be a high res photo. Not going to be any zoom. It doesn't say where the sweet spot of the camera is. Is it 10 feet away? Is it 15 feet away? So yeah, this is not going to be a good for wildlife time lapse. And for $279, you can buy a perfectly good point and shoot that will do a much better job. If that's what you're looking for. If you're looking for time lapse stuff, the Olympus Stylus Tough Line, you can get one of those for $300, and it does interval shooting. So you can set it up on a rock somewhere and have it shoot a picture every minute, or video, whatever it is. Yeah, this thing is crap. This thing is complete freaking garbage. Don't buy it. Do not buy this. I'm begging you. Don't be this stupid. Let's get to some emails from you guys. Bob Studer says, I got a couple of Newton message pads sitting in a drawer somewhere for recycling. You know what, Bob? If those things work, you'd get more money putting those things on eBay. Because I doubt very much Apple would give you any kind of store credit for them. But there are maniacs on eBay. If those things work, even if they don't work, put those on eBay. Somebody go to ebay.com and do a search for Newton message pad and tell me what the average selling price of a Newton message pad is right now. Bob says Apple servers could be big iron from HP, IBM, etc., and not PCs at all. Yeah, Bob, I said PCs, but I didn't mean personal computers. I meant Windows, IBM-based servers. Yeah, they're definitely not going to be straight-up PCs. Jenny Sudaby says, anyone know, is it possible to take a screen snapshot on one's iPad mini? If so, where's the file stored? What format is it in? How do I get at it? It's really easy, Jenny. It's simple. You push the power, the on-off button at the top and your home screen button very quickly, and you'll see and hear a flash, and it will show up in your camera roll. Speaking of which, let's do the Snapseed. Let's talk about Snapseed. Like I said, I mentioned this on the show a few weeks back, and then I wanted to show it off to you guys. Let me just set this up on my computer. Snapseed is a free iOS app from the folks at Google, and I say it's surprisingly good. It's less surprising when you realize that Google just bought it from somebody else. This is not an app that Google came up with on their own. Let's see if this thing works. There we go. So you can download it for free. It's also available on Google Plus, but again, the interface of it on Google Plus isn't very good. I don't like it at all, so I don't bother using it. You simply open up Snapseed, and you click the Open button in the upper right-hand corner. Go to your photo library and your camera roll, and there you go. So now there's all the photos you have in your camera roll. I stole this picture from one of our listeners. You click on it, you click the Use button, and then it pops up. Now the first thing I do, Brian Monroe says $40 for a Newton message pad on eBay. If you got a couple of them, Bob Studer, there's $80 for you. I'd sell them. Actually, I wouldn't. If I had a Newton message pad, I'd keep it just because I never had one, but I would keep it just because I think they were kind of cool. So there's the user interface for Snapseed. Real simple. Here in the middle, you've got not in the middle, but here on one side, you've got your image is here and your tools are over here on the right-hand side. Now this looks different on the iPhone, obviously, because you have less screen real estate. So keep that in mind when you look at the stuff on the iPhone. The first thing I do with every photo is I crop the photo. I want to get it down to the important parts of the photo. I want to get out or remove distracting bits. So all you do is here on the left-hand side, you'll see it says crop. There's one of these little pages that says crop. You click crop, window opens up a little bit more, and you've got the usual handles and grid for the crop. So I'm going to get rid of all this stuff here on the bottom because it's not important. That telephone pole there, light pole there is annoying. Maybe I'll bring it down a little bit to there. Okay, so I like that. Now you see here on the bottom, you've got an undo button. You've got a apply button. You've got other buttons here for rotation, for aspect ratio, and for a preview. So, and then you've also got a cancel button down here on the far left-hand side. So I'm going to click apply, and it does the crop and then brings us back to your options. The next thing I always do is tune image. tune image pops up. Now this is where Snapseed gets to be really a lot of fun and really kind of cool. There's nothing here. This is what when I first started using it, I was confused. It's like, I don't know where anything is. On the bottom, you can see it says brightness, but I don't know what anything is. It wasn't until I clicked up in the little information in the upper right-hand corner. It says tap anywhere to dismiss, swipe up and down to select enhancement, swipe left and right to adjust the enhancement, tap here to cancel, tap here to apply. Oh, now I got it. If you watch the screen. This is what makes it. If you folks listen to the archive and are just listening, my apologies that you're only hearing this, but you're not seeing it but this is one of those things where I'd say, go to the YouTube channel, Your Mac Life Show YouTube channel, and watch the video part of this, because this is really kind of cool. So you put your finger on your iPad and you just move your finger up and down and see these options that pop up: brightness, ambience, contrast, saturation, shadows, and warmth. And you literally, these could have been written in Polish. You don't have to know what these things do. All you do is choose one, and then, as the instructions said, move your finger left to right to change the parameters. So you see here, it says brightness 100. At the top, it gives you the number of the brightness. At the bottom, it gives you a scale of brightness. So you just slide back and forth until you get it to where you want it to be. So I'm going to make it a little bit darker. I want to go for a certain mood on this picture. And again, you click on the far right-hand side, you click apply, it processes it, boom, you're done. But what I do is I do all of my adjustments all at once. So contrast, and again, you just drag your finger back and forth, and make it a little contrast. And again, this is a stolen image from one of our listeners. Saturation. So saturation is one where it's going to add more color to it. Makes the colors pop a little more. It's going to give it quite a bit of saturation. I can look at the before and after comparison, so you can see how much of a difference this is making to the color of the image. And now I want to bring up the shadows. So you click on the shadows and you scroll up. So the shadows there at the bottom of the picture are starting to come into focus too. And then warmth. And warmth is whether it goes to the orange side of the scale or the blue side of the scale. Again, you don't need to know what this is. You scroll your finger along the bottom and you can see what warmth does. You can see how it makes it blue to the left and orangey to the right. So I want to go a little bit orangey. Click apply, and it does the process. Now there's a bunch of other things here. You can do straightening if your image is crooked. You can do all kinds of little detail things like sharpening to make things even more vibrant, and sharpening has a couple of options. You can make things black and white, and it very simply, very easily does black and white. You can do all kinds of different effects with the black and white and change the brightness and contrast and grain and all that kind of stuff. Vintage is kind of cool because it gives a kind of a cool sepia tone. You can do the same thing with all of these options. So let's go to saturate. Heavily saturate this thing. No, I don't like that. I'll go back. So all you do is just find out by clicking on this stuff what it does to the image. Just run your finger along and see if it creates an effect that you like. My favorite one, though, is HDR escape. And generally, HDR makes things look really bad because most of the time HDR it's done too much. For example, this image right now is way, way over the top with HDR. I don't like it at all. But I can always bring the HDR effect down to just where it pops for me. And usually that's around 15 to 20%. I like this image now. I like the way it just bringing out some of the details. So I click apply. Now for me, the secret is to do HDR again. So I'm gently layering HDR on top of one another. Again, the base is way too much, so I'm going to bring it way back down again. That looks good. I click apply. And I'll do this 3 or 4 times on HDR to see if I can't get enough of an effect that I really like. Now, one of the other cool ones that you can do is this grunge filter. See how that makes it really really look dark. And I mean, this is basically a horror movie effect. But the neat thing about grunge is you can see this dot here in the center. Well, using 2 fingers on your iPad, you can decrease that dot or increase it. And you can also, by dragging your finger across, change the kind of grunge filter. So you can get some really interesting effects with this stuff. It doesn't work with all images, but you can get some pretty cool effects on an image. I'm going to cancel that one. I don't like it completely. And then they've got some frames that you can add. So I like this frame, so I want to make it a little smaller or a little bigger. You can do drop shadows. You can do a whole bunch of different frames on this. So you see here on the bottom, there's a whole range of frames that you can use for these kinds of images. This is a really cool app. Like I said, this is the app that I use for every one of my images. Every one of my images gets cropped in Snapseed, and then it will get, I'll use the tune image to brighten it up and change the contrast, and then I'll use the HDR to make it pop a little bit more. So here's the original, and there is the new version of it. Original, new version. I love Snapseed. Really, really do love this app and love playing around with it. The other great thing about it is that because it's an iPhone app, because it's an iPad app, you can do this when you're just standing in a bank lineup, when you're passenger in a car, when you're on the bus going to work, when you're having your lunch. There's many times, and I'll sit on my couch and just want to be mindless. I'll turn a baseball game on TV that I don't got to watch, and I'll just grab the iPad and start messing around with Snapseed. Just grab an image I kind of didn't work out properly, and try to make it jump off the screen with Snapseed. I definitely encourage you guys to check this app out. Again, it's free. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. Free works for me. I don't know about you guys, but free is good. Let's see if I can't find my camera roll to show you that image in a full size. Yeah, no, of course not, because Mac OS won't let me do it that way. Oh. So anyway, that's Snapseed. That's Google's Snapseed. That is another segment of photography tips and tricks. StartingPointPhotography.com is the website. As always, you guys, because you're listeners to the show, I'm telling you this deal. If you're a subscriber to Your Mac Life, you get a 10% off discount. The Starting Point Photography Beginners Tips and Tricks class is a 2-hour Google Hangout where you get to watch me do these kinds of things and me explain the 10 tips and tricks I can teach you guys about how to make your photographs even better than what they are now, using a bunch of different techniques. And it doesn't matter what camera you have either. If you've got an iPhone, if you've got a point and shoot, if you've got a SLR, doesn't matter. The tips and tricks work no matter what camera you have. 2 hours, $50. You guys get 10% off if you're a subscriber to Your Mac Life. If you've been a subscriber to Your Mac Life for more than a year, the class is free. So sign up for it. Just send me an email saying you want to sign up. There's the website, yourmaclifeshow.com, has a link where you can sign up through Eventbrite. So does StartingPointPhotography.com. So all kinds of ways for you guys to sign up for the class. And I hope you do. I really love teaching people the class, and I have fun teaching people the class. So I'd like to get more people involved in it. So please do. What other emails do we got from you guys here? I've gotten in the past week or so. Jim Haynes sent us. Jim in Philadelphia. Nice guy. Jim sent this great email to the folks at Smile Software. I'd like to thank both of you, Smile Software and Shawn, for the recent software prize, but more importantly, for the continued service that Smile and Your Mac Life have given me. There are countless times when I amaze people with my productivity, and I couldn't do it without the Smile team behind me. Colleagues think I'm insanely fast typist, but they don't even see my fingers moving. I can edit or shuffle document pages that other teachers believe to be locked. I like being viewed as a superhero, and sometimes I wonder if I should keep my secrets. Actually, I have a big mouth, and I've been a Smile advocate whenever I'm given the chance. Shawn, this is really supposed to be Maya's letter, but I won't overlook the role you have played in this. Last month, you were able to celebrate 20 years of both entertaining and educating your listeners. The relationship between the YML podcast and great companies like Smile regularly introduces me to great ideas and wonderful products. I appreciate times like this when a free copy becomes available, but I'm always grateful for being able to make smart purchases based on your reviews. Thank you both for the prize package and the support you both have offered me. Jim. Thanks, Jim. That's a wonderful letter. And I was teasing him last week. Poor David, the marathoner. And first of all, I got to give David just giant props for running a marathon. There's no way I could ever run a marathon. As I've always said, I've never run more than 100 feet in my life. So there's no way I would ever be able to run a marathon. So I was teasing poor David because his the picture he sent me, he was looking kind of orange. He was, for some odd reason, he was all weirdly orange. Well, it turns out it's the charity color. It was orange, so I covered myself in body paint, he said. It had run a little towards the end. I'm not a keen runner and only do it to raise money for charity, in this case, multiple sclerosis, hence my website, Running for MS. Trust me, if I could raise money drinking 16-year-old single malts, I would. Awesome show. Keep going. Well, thanks, David. And congratulations for running the marathon. Like I said, I'll give you props for, I don't care what color you were. I'll give you props for actually going out there and running a marathon. You're a better man than I, because I sure as hell wouldn't be doing it. Let's see what else we got. Emails from you guys. Check the inbox. Our friend Dave Martin, first purchase of Apple stock was in 2001, and some of it went into the Aptos house. Good for Dave. I got to send a big shout out to the official pilot of Your Mac Life, Captain Ron Klutz. Ron has wrapped up his time at Apple. Ron is no longer working for our favorite fruit company. He's moved on to bigger and better things. I don't know if Ron wants me to say where he's working at now, but congratulations, Ron. He was there at Apple for 14 years. And from what he's told me, he's going to a bigger and better job, more money, more responsibilities, all that kind of stuff. So that's great for you, Ron. Congratulations. But he wanted to make sure that he was still allowed to be the official pilot of Your Mac Life. And I told him, of course he was. He'll always be the official pilot. Always be the official pilot of Your Mac Life. So congratulations, Ron, and hopefully you'll have a good time at your new gig. Folks, that's it for tonight's show. I want to say thanks very much to Ben Bajarin of TechPinions.com and CreativeStrategies.com for filling in for Jim Dalrymple and explaining all this kind of financial stuff to me. I didn't even think about Apple should be on the Dow. I wonder if that's going to be an actual issue come stock split time. And again, if you're an archive listener, do you have Apple stock? When did you buy it? At what price did you buy it? Will you buy Apple stock? I said earlier, I think I'm going to try to contact the sharebuilder.com folks, because the folks in the IRC chat room, Mark signing those guys saying they've used them in the past and liked them. And I'd be interested to know how that kind of thing works, how you can buy one share of a stock and whether or not that can be automated and things like that, and see what the whole stock thing is all about. So, folks, until next week, as always, I appreciate you guys being tuned in, whether you're listening in live during the show in the IRC chat room or on the Google Hangouts, or whether you're tuned in for the archive. As always, I've been Shawn King, and you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya!